Everybody. It's my pleasure to be here with my business exit, presenting to you today a little bit about my services. And the title of this presentation is "This Too Shall Pass." Tom and I were just talking a few weeks ago about exit planning, and we were kind of chuckling with each other. You know that with all businesses, it's not a question of if there will be an exit; it's a question of when there will be an exit. And then the second question is whether the owner will be horizontal or vertical. Now, I like to plan for a vertical departure, but you never know, and stranger things have happened. But very excited to be with you today. Just wanted to take a second just to introduce myself. As Tom mentioned, you know, my entire career has been in really business management roles, primarily within financial services and investment. Very passionate about driving results in organizations through people and through process. I'm a business owner myself, having started my own coaching business 3 years ago. And as a former COO, I have had great perspective on organizations and how they change and grow through time. And that's really the skill set that I bring to businesses and business owners today. A quick slide here on what do I actually do as a business coach? Well, what I do is I really work with business owners and their leadership teams on challenges that involve four things: their time, their team or their people, the money, meaning the business, right? And then exit. And obviously we're here today to talk about exit, but those are really the four buckets that my work fits into. And I want to just start by sharing this slide with you. It's one that I use with business owners. You know, whenever I'm first starting to talk about them, because very often we're so busy, caught up in our day-to-day, that we don't think about businesses are going through a cycle, just like everything in life goes through a cycle. Our relationships, our marriages, kids, businesses go through cycles as well, and they're predictable. The question is with a business, what cycle are they in? Are they in that learning phase where they're just starting out and everything's new and shiny and exciting? Are they in that growth phase where things begin to heat up and the challenges become different? Or are they in that decline phase? So we're not going to talk through this at all today, but I work with businesses in all parts of the cycle, and the needs are always a little different. But when it comes to business owners, here's the problem. For many, they've never stopped to actually think about exit. They're too busy on where they are right now to think about exit. Or maybe they have, and their expectations about valuation are out of sync a little bit, let's just say that. They think their business is probably worth a lot more than it really is, and there's no good reason for how they think it's worth a certain amount. And then the third thing is they have this blind spot, and it's not their fault, it's just that they're too close to their own business, but they have trouble looking at their business from the outside in. And so if I was to describe what do I do with businesses, it's really that. I help the business owners think about their business from the outside in. And in this case, we're going to talk about what does that mean when they're thinking about exiting their business. The next slide, before I just pull it up and share it with you, if there's one slide here that I want to kind of imprint on your brain, it's this next one. So just hang on, I'm going to advance the slide here. So one of the things that I position with business owners is not to think about themselves and their business, but actually to think about things on the other side. And in terms of that, there's really three types of buyers. Okay. Now on this graph here, in this graphic, you can see there's kind of three. There's like a money pyramid turned upside down, and then one that's for time, the time horizon, and then one for owner involvement. So these three buyers, who are they and what does this all mean? Well, there's the strategic buyer. And think here of buyers who will pay up for something. They're very thoughtful, very methodical, and they'll pay for the right stuff if it enhances their existing business or complements it in some way. So maybe there's some additional services that would be a great fit for their particular type of business, or maybe the location footprint would be a great fit. But in general, these tend to be very strategic, very thoughtful buyers. And they have a time on their hands. They don't have a hole in their pocket where the money's burning a hole and they have to act quickly. They're thoughtful, methodical, and strategic. The second type is the entrepreneurial buyer. And these are the buyers that, they're interested in seeing what's out there, but they're not in a hurry either way. They're not in the market, but they want to have a look at what's out there. And then finally, there's the opportunistic buyer. And these are the folks that are looking to make a quick buck, maybe acquire something, strip it down for parts, flip it, sell it. But that's typically their mindset. So it's quick, opportunistic transactions. So why am I telling you all this? Well, in general, those strategic buyers who are very picky and have that longer time horizon, they're willing to pay a little bit more, maybe a premium over that FMV, the fair market value, but they're selective. But if they find the right thing, they're willing to spend some more. The opportunistic, on the other hand, is not. They're going to pay it because it's at a discount, it's a fire sale. So again, I ask the business owners, think about what type of buyers do you want to be lined up with? Do you want to be facing off with someone who's just looking for a quick buck? Or are you looking for someone who appreciates what you put in place? The third thing on this slide I just wanted to mention really quickly is the owner involvement. One of the things that an owner may not necessarily have entirely grasped, although it sounds obvious, is that their future involvement in the firm is not clear. They may have no involvement or they may have some involvement. So that's a big unknown, and it's a very important one that I work with business owners, the whole mindset and the realization that we might be working on something and a future that doesn't include them. Next slide. Okay, here we go. So how do I do all this? Basically, I have a discovery process, as I do with all my clients, right? And it really starts with, what's their goal? Where are they looking to go to? What's the destination? And we really work to help them get clarity around that. At the end of the day, there's a result that they're looking to get. And I need to work through that with them about what their timeline is and then establish where their business is currently. So in that discovery process, a few of the things that I use, one is that I use industry benchmark reports. So what these reports provide is a comparison with other firms or companies in their industry or space or subcategory that they're in. And it basically provides financial metrics, growth metrics comparisons, and income statements, balance sheet comparisons for others that do the same things, the same service that they basically provide. And it's a great starting point where I can begin to have a conversation around their own business and what they think. And very often I'll talk to them about things like, well, what's the average sales per employee at your, just say it was a law firm, right? And ask them, what are your sales per employee? What's your profit per employee? What's your net margin? What's your accounts receivable average per days, etc. So I have these metrics that I can begin to have a conversation around how their business stacks up versus their competitors. And the reason that's important is because they are competing. All right, I'm going to keep going here. And then, so we also, out of those conversations, have to, and there's a whole host of these because all organizations are different, but there's generally 3 areas that we're going to work on that we almost always will have to work on, irrespective of the type of organization or firm that it is. And then you got to identify those and decide who's doing what, by when, etc. Okay, the first one of these 3 things, no big surprise, it's around the financials. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to revenue, expenses, and profit. And the conversations that I have with the owner is, what can they do to improve the financial situation of the firm? So we know what those numbers are, we know what the competitors are, but what can that actual firm do to improve their revenue, to adjust their expenses, and ultimately increase profits so they'll be attractive and present well in the marketplace. I mentioned the industry reports. One of the other things that I do with this is I really go in underneath these numbers. So for example, I put here about customers. I want to know from them, not just what their revenue is, but where does it come from? Who are their customers? And why did they buy from you? What do they actually know about their customers? And we have conversations again around how much of that is tied up in recurring revenue and all that stuff. So we look at financials, but it naturally, as we try to improve the situation, drives us towards having underlying conversations. Strong management team. Why is this important to the buyer? Well, it's important because they want to know what they're getting, right? They're going to make a very important acquisition. They're going to spend some money. They want to make sure that they are really clear on what they're getting. Particularly important with service firms where there's not product, there's inventory. In some ways, your staff and your management team are almost like inventory. So again, one of the things that I do is I work with the owner to evaluate the management team, see what they've got, look at the gaps. Where are the areas that they may have to do some improving on? Maybe there's some cross-training that can be done. But the big question is how capable are they of operating the business with the owner being there, and what can be done to mitigate some of that risk? So what can we do to make sure that the organization can run without the owner being there? There's other things as well, obviously, about employee engagement. As we know, it's a big topic for every firm right now. But the big thing is the strong management team. How can we make them stronger? How can we develop them? And again, for that, I use assessment tools. And I also use survey tools as well. And I can use those internally or externally. And then the tools that I use are coaching, training, and facilitation. So the third one is all about process. And why is this important to prospective buyers? Well, it's really important to them because, again, they have choices and they can make any number of acquisitions. So the real question is, why would they acquire this particular company? And they do not want to waste their time and their money trying to unravel things. When there's process, a way of doing things in an organization, it tells you a lot about the company. It'd be a little bit like buying a car, right? And there's no maintenance record with it. You don't know how they do things. Has it been serviced? Has the oil been changed? You know nothing about it. But when you go into an organization, you ask them for certain things. Can they provide it or not? So for example, I'll ask the organization about things like marketing and sales and onboarding. Like, how do you find your clients? What's that process look like? How do you onboard them? How do you service them? How often do you look at your financials as a team? What's your systems like? And I ask question after question after question, just like a buyer would, because they're going to come in and they're really going to dig deep, and you're much better to have gone through those questions within a private environment than having to do it when you're in the sales process. But really, I drive organizations to build process in a way that takes some of that risk and unpredictability off the table. So two things I just want to highlight on this: business intelligence and technology architecture, super important in your firm. Tom and I were just talking about this earlier. What do I mean by business intelligence? It means, do you know who your customers are? Do you know where your business is coming from? What can you tell them? How well can you speak about the organization that you have? I'll give you one example. I worked with a financial services firm. They told me about how their customers were at the center of everything that they did. And then I asked them if they could share with me who their top 10 clients were, and they couldn't because they didn't have a system. They were split across different countries. Some people didn't want to use a system, others didn't. But obviously there was a disconnect there, and one that a buyer would look in straight away and find. So business intelligence is really important, and technology, again, super important. What are you using? And it can either be an advantage or a detractor. So in closing, so what do I do with businesses when they're thinking about selling? I help them plan for it. There's a future market value, and they may have their ideas as to what that may or may not be, but we work together on a plan of identifying the areas where they can move the needle a little bit, remove some of that risk, the risk that potential buyers are thinking of when they're making a purchase, right? By making sure that they have their arms around the financials, that they can take steps to improve the financials, that they have a strong management team who are clearly very competent and well-trained and have thought through, and they operate the business in a sustainable and a very predictable way. And that's the difference between getting, I guess, the market rate, premium, or a discount. And then secondly, the final thing that I just want to mention is whether you own a business or you have clients that own a business or friends that own a business, even if they don't have a time horizon for exiting anytime soon, it's really important that they operate their business uh, as if they do have a pending exit. We all know people who have had to come off the playing field a little earlier than expected. I've seen it in my career. I've seen it with businesses as well, where some unexpected event, a health issue, a change in lease conditions, but something fundamental has changed very quickly. And you want to be prepared for those. So I really encourage you to think about business owners who aren't planning an exit, and really encourage them to think about how they can run their business in a way that works for them, but also sets them up to be able to adapt for the future. So that's it. That's the long and short of what I do, how I help business owners. If any of you are interested in learning more about that assessment report, just reach out to me. I'd be happy to share a copy. Or likewise, if anybody watching this is thinking about selling a business or is working with a business that might want to at some point, I'm always happy to have a conversation.